to the hot seat.
On the hot seat, we tackle the toughest business questions, addressing the most pressing issues our business community faces today. We dive into the core of business growth and strategic development. Whether you're launching a startup, managing a growing business, or refining an established enterprise, we're here to provide you insights that you need. Get ready for candid conversations and practical advice that you can implement today. Stay with us and let's grow your business together.
There we are.
I was feeling like something wasn't quite right then. The look on your face, it was like, where are we?
I was like, where are we? That didn't switch automatically, but it is there now.
Perfect.
Right.
We're here. We're live. This is the hot seat. And today I want to talk all about failure. I know this is something that you've talked about in your life, in your history, in your journey of all those things. So let's dive straight into it. I'd love to really unpack this with you, Kristian. Where did the concept of failing forward come from? This is one of our values. This is something we talk about often. How did that come about for you?
Actually, the actual origin or the concept of failing forward is often attributed to John Maxwell, right? So he actually popularized the phrase in his book, Failing Forward. And really what it is turning mistakes into stepping stones for success. And the idea centers around the premise that failure isn't just an unavoidable part of life, but a fundamental element necessary for both personal and professional growth. So that's essentially where it stemmed from, or the concept came from. But for me, there are some core principles around failing forward. And some of these are also expressed by Maxwell, as well as a stack of other thought leaders that focus on the development of seeing failure not as a negative endpoint, but as a crucial learning opportunity. So I'm really big on reframing failure. I'm also really big on progressive learning, whereby each failure is viewed as a stepping stone for success, Simone. And I think finally it's the resilience building, right? So it's embracing failure in order to build resilience by teaching adaptability and persistence in the face of those setbacks. So it really does encourage a mentality of perseverance where each setback increases determination, right? So, there is historical context too to failing forward. I guess Maxwell may have coined it, but the underlying principles of failing forward have actually been recognized for centuries, right? Across various cultures. So historical figures such as Thomas Edison, right? And modern entrepreneurs as like Steve Jobs have exemplified this approach. And, Edison famously said, I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And I think that perfectly captures the essence of failing forward. And, you know how much reading I do. And so, I was recently reading up something on Dyson, and Sir James Dyson journey in actually creating the Dyson vacuum cleaner is probably a really perfect example of failing forward. It took Dyson, no shit, 5,000. All right, okay, don't quote me the number, but it's like 5,100 times, right? Or so 5,100 prototypes and numerous years to perfect the vacuum cleaner. It's like, wow. So each failed prototype.
I'm so glad they did, because I know we are huge Dyson fans in this family.
Yeah, well, he seriously made some serious money in the process. But, each failed prototype taught Sir James Dyson something new, which he applied to the next design. And I guess the interactive process, fueled by his resilience and willingness to fail. Ultimately, Simone led to a highly successful line of products renowned globally. I mean, he was one of the first people to say goodbye to the vac bag, and increased suction and all of those things. So, failing forward for me is at the center of everything, because I've had a few failures in my life, 21 actually. And that's business failures.
Not counting them.
Yeah, I've got a journal full of them. But I think that at the time when you're going through those failures, you want to bury your head in the sand. I was never that person. I own them. I was the one that was left homeless, penniless, and broke. Yet people want to chastise you and criticize you, but they were still at home in their houses, sitting by warm fires, and I was sleeping out and on the street, and then sleeping on couches after having a value of $30 million, right? And I never gave up that fight, and then eventually, people started taking the piss out of me when I became an adjunct professor of a Sandstone University, and they're like, "Oh, so are you the professor of failure?" And especially those time wasting people called journalists. Not all of them; some are fantastic, but some of them who want to sell crappy papers to crappy people who only want to create division, and it's really sad. And that's why failing forward is so important to me. It's so important to people like Edison in our history, to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs created the iPhone, revolutionized the way that we communicate today. He put a PC in your hand so you can watch all the games that you're watching and create all the YouTube. You think about the YouTube billionaires that have been created, the Facebook creators, the TikTok creators. All these platforms would never have existed if it wasn't for one man and his team's vision. Right, and their strong desire to be able to fail forward. So, to me, and it is one of our values, and we teach that in growth school. We teach that in COD, in Customers on Demand. We are constantly teaching people to go full out, play full out, right? And I think that's also part of failing forward, Simone, because if you're too scared to make a mistake, you'll never reach your potential. I mean, we got the Olympic Games on at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. Those people there have made sacrifice upon sacrifice upon sacrifice in order to be crowned gold medalist. And let me tell you, there are people there that should win the gold medal, but who do not. Right? And they do not for a whole bunch of circumstances. Now, do they give up? I've noticed there's a lot of talk around the Olympic Village and how it's not tailored to high performance. I don't really know much more than that. But, I don't believe that they are athletes saying excuses. They're saying, hey, I've been training like this. But that's, you've got to adapt to that environment. You don't have a choice, right? So, being adaptable is all part of the learning curve. And so, just like Sir James Dyson and Thomas Edison and Albert Einstein, great inventors of their time, men in this case, that made significant changes. But there are so many women that now make this level of impact. I mean, the fact that women, were able to vote in Australia, I believe in Adelaide, one of the first cities in the world, it changed the way we do business. We're a better country for it, because we have diversity and inclusion. That's also, we learnt from those mistakes. We did not continue to oppress a gender. Now we're lifting the lid on everything. There isn't even gender. So, we're changing. And again, we'll have to learn from that too. There's going to be other learnings from that. And that's what allows us to be and have and do more for that reason. I think Belinda says it is where we learn our best lessons, right? And I agree in many ways, Belinda, but I also disagree. You can learn a lot from success. Success leaves clues, as does failure. And so it's a balance of both. And I think this is where, there's so much learning for all of us. And I'd like to think that one of the main reasons that, people choose to join growth school beyond the community is because they know that they're going to learn something from everyone. And and a lot of the time it used to be always me. People came to me when I was doing only one-on-one work, and their expectation was, you are the one that's going to show me the light. Well, it's like, I can show you the light and I can even create the path for you, but you got to do the work. And when you then take it to a whole community level, you've got, again, that diversity, that inclusion, all of those other steps, and they're profoundly important and very impactful.
Yeah. There's so many takeaways and so much to learn in that. And within that, you kind of answered my second question, was whether it's really necessary to fail. But from what I'm hearing from you, is it impossible to fail? Does everyone fail at some stage, at some term?
Hey, look, everyone fails, right? A child, the day they're born, and they have to make that next step, the most gigantic step to mankind. No, it wasn't the walking on the moon. Well, whether you believe we did or not is irrespective. Watching your children take their first step is incredible, but watching them roll over onto their backs and stomach without assistance, that's the real big first step. They can't actually walk until they do that. Then it's the ability to be able to, what my physio tells me to do all the time, and it's, press your hands on the floor and arch your back. For them, the ability to lift themselves. That leads them to all those next steps. Before they walk, they are crashing and beating their heads down. I mean, I told you about me Googling to get Leonardo a helmet when I became a parent for the first time, and it was like, holy crap, and you learn quickly. Google tells you, no, don't buy a helmet. They need to learn, right? They need to build that resilience. And so it's quite remarkable. I mean, look, failure is a critical component, Simone, to substantial growth and innovation. Okay, adversity creates agitation. Agitation creates innovation. I truly believe that my one significant gift is the ability to navigate stormy waters, but also it's to navigate the opportunities that transpire from that. The ability to see the wind change, using sailing terms, to see the wind change and knowing where you need to position the boat. Anyone who's watched professional sailing will watch these guys they're going in so many different directions that if you were to look at a map, it's squiggles. And that is what success and failure looks like. People believe that success is linear, right? You speak to an accountant and they think it's linear. Everything's linear. It's not, right? And so it's a shit show. Being in business, no matter how good your plan is, it can be a shit show, right? For things like black swan events, right? Like COVID. It's all well and good listening to everyone saying, why do we have to have 25 vaccines and this and that and the other? And it was all, great. But under the circumstances, people needed to do what they needed to do. Right. I work in the health and medical sector, as you know. I'm chairman of a day hospital, and I do a lot of other work in day hospitals around Australia, and, predominantly writing strategy and making these people make money. A lot of them don't make any money because, again, they're run by specialists who see things as linear, and it blows my mind because doctors actually are taught to think well outside, because they have to problem solve. Someone presents to you and they've got to work through this process of elimination in order to give you an outcome that you're going to be pleased with, or you're going to go and, on Dr. Google and scope it out yourself. And that's dangerous. So I think it's all about learning and innovation. I think importantly, failure is about building resistance and character, right? Resistance and resilience and character. And that's navigating through the failures beyond resistance. Okay, but the one that I really want to talk about, it's cultivating emotional intelligence. Okay, and I call that emotional resilience. So many people don't realize there's another layer to resilience, and it's building those foundational building blocks that make you adaptable, that make you visible to the world without fear, right? And, some people call that vulnerability. Brene Brown done some incredible work in that space. But then you also look at, Carolyn Dweck's work around mindsets and the notion of fixed and growth mindsets. So, that leads me then to that ensuring sustainable success. In a business context, those who have experienced and overcome failure often have a deeper understanding of the dynamic of their industry and also a clearer perspective on the business landscape. Now, it's easy for me to say. I'm a veteran of 80 ventures. As I said, I've failed at 21, 19, kind of like, not so bad, but several catastrophically. And it's so hard to recover from any failure, let alone something that's derailed your entire life. So that's so fundamentally important. And the depth of experience ensures more sustainable success. And as decisions are made with a consideration of the past lessons learned from those failures, the rest of the world opens up to you. And I think this is what gives our company, an advantage over other firms who are really good at marketing. We're not that great at marketing because people think that I don't have a problem talking about myself. They're right, I don't. That's because I know the shit that I'm talking about and I know it back to front. And in a country like Australia, that's perceived arrogant. That's perceived overconfident. It's not. It's fucking fact. And it drives me crazy, right? Like, if you don't know yourself well, then you've got a problem. If you don't know what you've achieved or what you haven't achieved, then you haven't reflected enough. And I think that's the next step that we've got to acknowledge in failing forward, right? It's okay to tell people how fucking good you are if you can back it up with results, right? But we live in a country where it's like not okay because we need to make everyone feel included. Like, honestly, I don't, I care what our audience thinks, but it pisses me off when you go to a football game and your kids are playing, or a soccer game or a netball game, whatever it might be, and it's all about fucking participation. The fucking world is not about participation. It's winning or losing. And it's losing is okay, as long as you play to win. But when you say, go out there and just play, right? Don't train at training. Don't put in effort. Don't watch extra videos or put more effort. You know what it does? It pisses off the A players, right? That's no different to business, ladies and gentlemen. No different to business. In business, the mediocre, the people that don't adapt, the fucking bench sitters, right? That piss off the players, right? When you look at professional teams, the bench is angry they're not playing. So the bench trains harder. What does that do? It makes everybody else train harder. I see people criticizing Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And comparing him to Leo Messi. They're both exceptionally talented fucking players of a generation we may never see again, right? And to me, it's mind-blowing that we're criticizing a man who's almost 40, who's still playing at a World Cup. And they're saying he's not good, yet his own teammates are saying he makes us better. It's like, shut up, right? Like, shut up. You're not that person doing the work. You're not doing the grind. And at the end of the day, do I think Cristiano Ronaldo is arrogant? He said some arrogant shit. I don't give a shit. In my opinion, you're still one of the most incredible athletes of all time. And I've got to respect your commitment. I've got to respect your achievements. Does that make sense? And so this is where I look at this. And I think of someone like SpaceX and I think of Elon Musk. He's a prime example of failing forward in a high-stakes industry, okay?
Yeah.
So if you think that early in its history, SpaceX experienced, 3 consecutive failures in launching the Falcon 1 rocket, okay? 3. Most people would have given up at 1. NASA probably would have given up the whole space program, right? So despite significant financial and reputational risk, the company actually analyzed its failure. They adopted their design, Simone, and they continued to pursue their goal. Their 4th launch was successful.
Yeah.
And
so
today,
that kind of leads me sort of thinking about how do you make sure that you don't run out of money while you're failing? That's coming down to your strategy, right? The plan that you've got.
Look, Elon has plenty of money and he had plenty of investors, right? Because they backed him, because it's not his first rodeo. They knew, you knew what you're going to get into. But, you know, and now, by the way, they are the leader in commercial spaceflight. You know, having achieved numerous milestones that once, ladies and gentlemen, were deemed impossible. Okay? That, I mean, and I'm talking about people that are taking global thinking, global ideation, solving massive global problems. But to answer your question, you need to have a roadmap and a runway. You need to have a strategy before you go in, you know, knees deep, right, into uncharted waters where there's crocodiles. Like everybody knows, you do not go into WA and decide to go swimming in the water, yet there's always one person that gets eaten. Right? And it's like, and I feel bad for their family and everyone, but there are signs everywhere in WA beaches and in Queensland beaches in particular too, all the Northern Territory, that says, do not enter. Now that is stupid. That's not failure. That's just going, someone has failed before. Here are the signs saying, do not enter this space. You enter, well, then you haven't learned a thing, right? Same thing in business. What you need to do is you need to build your roadmap. You need to, and yeah, you don't have to go and hire a Kristian Livolsi to go and write your freaking strategy. You can get a piece of paper and a pen, and I go through a shitload. Where's the camera? I go through shitloads of pens, shitloads of scrapbooks, and everyone that knows me knows I'm constantly ideating. Right? Like I'm like, okay, what do we do next? Why? Because we have, 40, 50 clients in our programs, and I've got to think of all of their varying industries. So I've got to go and do a lot of research. And why? Because I'm an A player, right? I don't sit there and back and go, I want a 35% retention rate in my program. I want 95 to 100, right? Now, there's no way I'm ever going to hit 100 because circumstances change for people. They grow out of what we do and they want to go somewhere else. Good luck, go. Just don't bother coming back because you'll piss me off, right? Especially if you're behind, right? But the ultimate part is I got to accept that.
Baby, you let you go and have a baby and then come back. You can't.
Yeah, no, if it's that reason, different. I'm talking when they decide that there's someone out there that's better, that can serve them better, and then they come back 6 months later. Oh, that was a disaster. No shit, right? Like, you know, don't look for shiny objects just because I want to give you. You know me. I tell people the facts, and I tell it hard. Some people don't like that, and they're like, well, you know, I could do better elsewhere. Then fucking go, right? Like, you know, like if I coached a team, and this is why I'm not a coach on a sporting team, particularly for children. I swear too much. And thank God Gary V the other day, you know, someone was criticizing him for swearing and cursing, and he actually said even my kid's school teacher says, "Oh, your daughter curses too much," and he said, "What the fuck's the problem with that?" You know, when you get to the real world, and I'm like, okay, Gary, that's a bit harsh, but right. But the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, if you're too worried about what other people think, you're going to struggle. Right. And you know, people always say to me, how do you pick your mentors? I pick mentors that tell me straight to my face where my problems are and where my opportunities lie. Okay. And I've got some incredible friends and incredible mentors that have shaped the person that I am today. Now, I had this conversation with my uncle yesterday in hospital. He's really, really unwell. And his mindset is mind-blowing, right? Like, this man has endured stage 4 carcinoma, bladder cancer, did all the chemo, did the exercise medicine treatment, followed the book, right? And inspired me because I've seen other people not do that. And he's ticked all the boxes. Chemo kicked ass. And then they went, well, let's do radiotherapy and immune therapy together. Well, that didn't quite go so well. You know, and he's lost 16 kilos in 10 days and in hospital. And it's such a hard thing for me to watch. But yet, you know what? Every time there's an element of weakness, I look at him in the eyes and I say, look how far you've come already. We're not here to give up today. No matter how many things we got to do. And do you know what? It lights him up because he used to be, you know, a prolific lawyer, ran his own practice. He gets it. Do you know what I mean? It's the adversity we face. It's how we handle it. Does that make sense? You know, it's a very personal story for me, and he's okay with, I guess, sharing it because he's been telling everyone what he's going through. But, you know, it is very, very difficult. And You got to surround yourself with people that lift you up in those moments. You know, when I've been down and out, he's been there for me. You know, he's been there for me. And that's the big thing. And you've got to pay that forward, and you've got to also be able to receive it and give whenever you can. So, you know, learning from all these people that we're surrounded by is not just what they're saying, it's watching their behavior. Right? That's what I mean by before. Failure leaves clues, so does success. But you got to be watching, you know. My son always wants to just jump in and do shit. Like, Leo, stop. Watch. Right? Like, watch for a little bit. And, you know, I guess I reflect on my upbringing, and I remember I wanted to play cards all the time as a 9, 10-year-old, watching my grandparents sit around tables with their friends in our apartment in Italy, and they'd sit there and play, you know, briscola and scorpa and tresette and all these Italian games. And they're math games. You got to... Man, I kept getting told, no, sit there and watch. I was so angry. But you know what? In hindsight now, I watched 4 to 6 different players play. I learned how they all played. So when I finally was allowed to play at the age of 13 and 14, I could pair with any one of them and we would win because I knew how they played. And I look back now and go, I should have worked out then I wasn't stupid. But I didn't. Because now I think back and, you know, a lot of people don't like playing cards with me now because I count cards. I remember the cards. Right? And that was because I had to watch. The sacrifice of not being able, instead of whinging and being a little sissy about it, I sat there, right? And I watched and I learnt. And, you know, that's no different to what I've done in business. You know, I've watched and I learned and I failed and I practiced and I succeeded. And you take that.
Well, I think it's so right. It doesn't matter if you learn and you watch. It doesn't mean that you won't make a mistake, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with too. You don't want to make a mistake and you seek to find people to help you navigate making them. But ultimately, everyone has to fail, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about cards and you talk about total failure, like the total stupid failure. We're playing poker one night at my house and we're pretty serious poker players. And we play for money, but not high stakes. Like, it's, you know, we'll put in $150 buy and we play that way. And we play for hours. I folded on a flush hand at the end. I completely did not see because I was too involved in the betting, and the pot was huge. It was like $800. But I folded a flush hand. Like, I could have only lost to 2 more types and I would have won, right? And I folded, and it wasn't until the dealer goes, Kristian, what did you have? Because we pay for a dealer from the casino to come and deal. And I said, yeah, have a look. And he had a look and he goes, you folded a flush. I'm like, no, I didn't. Because I thought I was going for something totally different. So if you don't pay attention, you make mistakes. Right? Yeah. So no matter how good you are, and I'm not, by the way, FYI, I am not that great a poker player. I've had great teacher, Ricky Lee, Dr. Ricky Lee. If you ever come up against him on a poker table, run. He knows all the maths. Ricky's a very dear friend of mine. Big shout out to you, Professor Ricky Lee, out in New Zealand at the moment. He recently stepped on a knife while he was moving his boxes from Sydney and copped about 10 stitches. And I've been a terrible friend. I've only reached out a couple of times. So I will do that, Ricky. I'll reach out today at some point. I know you're not going to watch this, but it's important for me to acknowledge that.
Well, Kristian, I want to wrap up with one final question, and I'd love to ask you, what would you say to those people out there that really struggle with perfectionism and just they really want to avoid failure? What would your message be to them?
Drink decaf coffee. Look, the message that I would have for people who are avoiding failure, is that the question?
Yeah.
Why? What are you so scared of? Like, what are you so scared of? Like, there's, you know, walking across the street and not looking left and right can kill you. What is holding you back so much that you're prepared to live a meaningless life? I mean, I don't get it. I really don't get why people are so scared to have a go. You know, I'm a firm believer that if you have a dream, there's no point in just having it in the back of your mind. You've got to do everything you can to make that dream a reality, because living an unfulfilled life, that's torture, right? Knowing that you could have been more, had more, achieved more, it's what, and waking up one day in your 50s and 60s and being miserable, and people call that a midlife crisis. You are in a midlife crisis because you haven't done what your heart has wanted you to do. I see so many people who stop growing and then wonder why their marriages fall apart. And it's scary. I see it in business, and that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time working. And it's not something that we write anywhere. Like, we help people with their fucking marriages and relationships. We don't, right? But because of what I've been through, and I've never been through that, I'm truly happy, blessed that I have found the one. She always says to me, it'll be you that leaves me, not me that leaves you. And I'm like, I'm pretty good here. I'm pretty happy. But the reality of it is, you've got to grow together, and so you can't be scared, and I'll use this as an example. Lucy, my amazing wife, the reason why I've been able to succeed as much as I've succeeded since we've been together, she, after having children, was really concerned. She was getting bored at home. And I'm like, okay, I could see how this was going to cause us challenges. And I said, why don't you, you're an amazing artist. Why don't you turn that skill into something that we could use, like graphic design? And she dabbled in it, and she's amazing at sketching and artwork, and I could never get her to actually do any art anyway, which was kind of interesting. Now you can find her, lucyroselivolsi.com.au, I think. The website, I think, is live finally. She's sold a bucket load of art already privately, and so now we're marketing that. But it's taken me years to get her to do it. And she's got incredible talent. But going back to the story, she was so scared to let herself down and everybody else that she refused to do it. Now she is the head of our graphic design department with a team of 3 or 4 people in the media business, and she's built the whole brand that people see, right, around me and everything else. But it's also made our relationship stronger and better because she has something to also aspire to, So so because I look at that and go, I want to be married to Lucy for the rest of my life. Like, I want to get old, and I want to, hopefully die before she does, because I don't really want to deal with the consequence of losing my best friend. And but it still doesn't mean that I'm going to live any less because of that. Do you know what I mean? I'm still going to jump out of airplanes when I get given the chance and do crazy shit. But it's a calculated risk, right? But again, failure also holds you back in your relationship. Failure holds you back in everything if you allow it to take control. So any of you out there who are struggling, right? Focus on your mindset. That's really the first thing, right? Embrace failure as a learning opportunity. And my good friend Paul Edgington, in a podcast that we were on in, I think, series 2 that I filmed, and you'll be able to find it on our YouTube channel. He says failure is just expensive school fees. I was like, oh my God, Paul, that is so good, right? Now, he sent his kids to Pembroke, so that's an expensive school. And, all of his kids have come out excellent, right? Like, and by the way, I think they're overseas traveling. Paul, if you watch this, I know you do watch these sometimes. And he's an amazing human being in his own right. Entrepreneur of the Year for Ernst & Young for community and engagement, built, SYC into a powerhouse, and also then left a legacy by training another good friend of ours, Mark Hoffman Davies, sorry. Incredible human. His name was Hoffman, got married, took on his wife's name combined. Both of them did, Hoffman Davies. And, he now runs SYC. So not only did Paul, build an incredible legacy for 20 years and took something that wasn't making any money to, I think, an $80 million business, looking after disadvantaged youth and homelessness for that homeless market. He then also planted a seed and took Mark from his job into there. and nurtured him, and it made him allowed to grow. Now he runs that organization. I mean, that is, to me, that is genius learning, right? And Paul is also not a good friend, but a good mentor of mine, and he's taught me so many cool things. You know, I mean, he's gone and studied at Harvard, and he's a real nerd. He's a bit of a geek, you know, collects all these little cars, and he's got this huge collection, loves Mercedes Benzes, right? But, you know...
Is it fair to say that failing forward is all about risk and reward?
It is, but you know what it really is about? You know, and while I'm sitting here talking to you, it's really coming... It's surrounding yourself with the right people. Right? Like, you know, Jim Rohn says you're the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with most of the time. And you know what? It's so true. Because if you, and I'm talking about this, the question you asked, you know, if there are people out there that are scared of failing, surround yourself with people that are not. Right? And I'm not talking about high risk. You know, for a long time, people went, you know, when I sat on the Bohu Engineering, when I became the chairman of Bohu Engineering, people were going up to Jody and Jeremy, you know, 35-year business, family, generations, going, you've just hired like one of the craziest entrepreneurs to be the chairman of an ultra-conservative regional business. They never saw that in me because I'm not. When I'm managing other people's assets, I'm completely different because my job as a chairman of a board is to manage risk, is to manage, you know, is to assist in governance. It's to set the culture, set the tone, right? And it's to create a strategy that can diversify that business and grow it into something that other people may not be willing to do. But it's not about risk, right? So what it is about surrounding yourself with people who know and have been through that thing. And a lot of those people don't exist. That is the reality of it. Like, people that, like me, there's not that many of us, especially someone who's in their mid-40s. You know, and to think that I had this level of experience in my mid-30s, and that's why I became an adjunct professor of a Sandstone University at the age of 37, right? You know, I mean, I look back now and only now can reflect that, you know, even when I got appointed as the entrepreneur in resident for Adelaide University, one of the key reasons we were able to mobilize those startups and get them to achieve what they achieved, I didn't achieve it. I didn't help them raise $189 million in less than 12 months. I was a catalyst because I planted the right seeds. I got the watering cans out and I watered when it was required. But they did the work because they believed in themselves, right?
Yeah.
You know, that is the biggest difference. Actually, I was at the RA yesterday with my uncle, and Personify Care came up on the screen. You know, Ken and his team, they were one of the companies inside of that incubator. You know, and I was sitting there going, "Oh my God, Ken, this is huge!" And I know that they're out in all the hospitals, and it's just a brilliant system that they created. They created that there and then. You know, Resview, Tom Wellesby, man, I judged him for the startup awards, the challenge, and you know, I had to fight the other judges, say this guy's gonna nail it, and he'd lost twice before that. Resview's been raising millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it's changing the entire landscape of apartments. It's the facility management software, right? And I can go on and on. Life Whisperer, who are overseas, Jonathan Hall and the Periginis, you know, and Michelle and Don. I mean, the sacrifices these people made, the risk they took. That's artificial intelligence in embryo fertilization, right? Like, you know, I have had the advantage, I have had the privilege and honor to work with such diversity, right? And I don't for 1 minute take that for granted. And it just so happens that God struck me one day with a lightning bolt, and I fucking had this incredible memory because I never had it as a kid. And so that's the other thing I want to say out there. For all you people with ADHD, I'm your tribal leader, right? Like, seriously, no shit. How many of our clients have ADHD, right? But the reality of it is, right, I am one of those kids that was diagnosed at the age of 10 or 12, whatever the hell it was, with ADHD and dyslexia, right? I didn't read a book from cover to cover until I was 44 years old, right? And it was because Toby Pierce said to me at a breakfast meeting, you really should read more books. And so now I read a book a week, right? But that one person said something. That's learning from your failure. Like, why aren't you reading? You have all this other knowledge, but you're not feeding your brain with more. So if you can't be the smartest person in the room, go read what other smart people are doing. And Toby's an incredibly smart guy, right? Really smart guy. And like mind-blowing for a kid that's not even, well, I think he's 30 now. Like, it's just, it's crazy, right? And so for me, what's really important, and I could talk about this topic all day because it's not just failure, right? And I love talking about this stuff. This is where really my heart is, because I really believe that we can transform the world if we all come together and appreciate the opportunity that learning from failure, learning from success, learning from community, right, makes the biggest transformational difference to everybody. And for our children out there who have dyslexia and have ADHD, it's okay. You don't all have to be fucking doctors and surgeons, right? You don't have to be engineers. I know mates that are Sparkies, and we've got clients in that space that are making more money than the doctors, right? It's what's your motive? What are you truly inspired to do, right? And you know, and don't ever lose sight of that. Don't be scared to have a go. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You get to start again more intelligently. I mean, come on. And that's the mindset I'm talking about. So look, I want to finish on something, because I think this is really important. My kids are currently watching Harry Potter for the 7th time, each one. And you know, we recently went to Europe, and we went to the station, whatever it is, 9.5, 9.75. And mate, wouldn't you be kicking yourself if you were the publishers that turned down J.K. Rowling's, right? And she pitched that to a dozen people, right? But before, you know, and she, before becoming one of the best-selling all-time authors, J.K. Rowling was faced with numerous rejections, okay? Because of her manuscripts. I mean, can you believe it? Now that you've seen the movies, you've read the books, you know, her resilience in the face of these failures was pivotal, right? She believed in her work and she persisted, ultimately finding that success that far exceeded any of her initial expectations, right? And I think that's what I want to finish on for our listeners is, don't be inspired by me, right? I'm just a person doing the ride with you. You know, the true inspirations are the Elon Musks, the J.K. Rowlings, the Stephen Jobs, you know, the Thomas Edisons, you know, all of these incredible human beings that challenge you. But you know who the real heroes are? Our children, right? And inspiring them to never, ever give up on their dreams. Because my children in particular are white, little privileged children, right? And I try and teach them that. It's like, hey, you are white, you're privileged, you have everything that you need, you have food on the table. There are people all over the world that do not have these things. Do not take that for granted, right? And it doesn't matter where you are, you know, and I try and teach that. We try and teach that to our children all the time. And I've now opened that conversation with parents at the school saying, hey, what do we do about this? You know, like, I don't want our children to grow up because they go to these fancy, expensive schools and they have, you know, all the latest gear. You know, we try and control that as much as we can, and we make our children work for it. Like, they have to work because they have to understand the value of money. But that is also this notion of failure. Let's not keep making the same mistakes generationally, right? Like, let's, you know, like even today I was speaking to one of my property people, and I'm buying some property, and they said, what's your motivation here? I said, I want to buy 2 properties, 1 for each child, because what I can't handle is people who retain their inheritance their whole life until they're in their 90s and then give it to their children when their children are now 75, 80, and then their grandchildren are 50, right? Like, you're just starving generational learning, right? You know, if you built generational wealth, then pass it down and give it to others who need it. You know, support educational programs, support those things. So I've just said, look, I'm going to buy these over the 10 years. So this is the kind of investment I want. So then when they turn 18, I can give them those in the trust and they can do whatever they want with the money, right? Like, you know, but the money has to go to certain things. So we're mapping this out at the moment where they can buy more property. So that means that by the time they've got a family of their own, they're set. Right? And they can follow their dream. And that goes back to your question. You know, you look at 3 generations of unemployment. It's so hard for those people to dream.
Yeah.
Because they've grown up in that environment. But you can break that curse. right? If you've been born in that environment, you can break it, but you got to break free. And what is it? Some of the 5 people you hang out with. How many great stories is there of people who grew up in these poor? It's like Will Smith in that movie.
Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness. I don't watch anymore because it just makes me cry, right? and but the sacrifices, right? What about The Greatest Showman, right? That is a true testament of an entrepreneurial career. The mistakes he makes, how he gets caught up in it all, right? And yet his family support him and love him and nurture him. Like the sacrifice of so many people. That's business, ladies and gentlemen, but it's fucking life.
Yeah.
Right? So you can't be defeated because you make a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I could do this all day. I got to get out of here. I am late.
I know you can. Huh? I always love it when I can pick a topic that absolutely lights you up, Kristian, and gets you riled up. It's always
failure. Look, Simone, topics like failure and culture and leadership, people just talk basic. They talk textbook shit, right? Whereas I like to get right in there. This is what it's really like, and failure is a good thing. That's probably the key message out of all this. Failure is not bad. Like, look at the way I look at it. And that's what I'm hoping comes out of these. And this is why you ask such great questions that force this to come out. And what did we say when we started the hot seat? We want people to see the real me. Not just this fabricated shit that people want you to be. Like, this is me, right? This is me. The song from The Greatest Showman. I'm the bearded lady, right? But the reality is, you've also got to have compassion. You got to have care. You got to have empathy. That's the emotional resilience that gets built. I see Belinda's wrote a whole bunch of comments, and she's written, "A life lived in fear is a life half lived." That was from Strictly Ballroom, right? Fail fast and learn quickly. Absolutely. How many times do we reiterate in what we do? It's as I always say, I always knew I'd end up where I am. I just had no idea of the journey that I would have taken to get here. And I'm the luckiest and most blessed person in the world. Like to me, that's my own thing. And why? Because I have everything I've ever wanted. But Jesus, if I had to predict the path of how I got here, even as an amazing strategist that I am, there's no way on earth I would have written it like that. And so that's and that's part of accepting that failure is the norm in your life, and it's those building blocks, It's just I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm just reflecting on my mind is running at 1,000 miles an hour because right now I could write a book. Because I'm inspired. I know that's crazy, right? I'm inspired by talking to you and the 2 people watching the show. We know that's not the case. Oh, by the way, if anyone hasn't seen the news, I'm officially a YouTube partner. I was accepted into the program on the weekend. Normally takes 2-3 weeks. We were accepted in less than 24 hours. I want to thank all of you that have been watching. Because it's not the 1,200 subscribers that got us there. It's the 4,900 watch hours in the last 120 days. Mind-blowing. So thank you to our team. Thank you to all of you who have been watching. I got goosebumps because that is, without you, there's no point of us doing anything. And so that tells me that all of you are watching almost, and we look at the watch times, and so many people are watching from start to finish, and some are coming back. And just remember, please hit replay. By the way, one of the main reasons we've grown so much in the last 100 days is Belinda, right? Belinda not only watches each episode, but replays them and tells everyone about it. Belinda is one of our star students who has grown from customers on demand all the way through to growth school, and is a huge contributor to our community. And that's what I mean. You got to surround yourself with the right people. Just her energy, her vitality, her ambition, her drive, and her generousness. And that's really the big thing. Her generousness to help others, right, has been phenomenal in the group, and it's made a significant difference to everyone. And it's not just Belinda. We've got amazing other people in the group that do the same. And it's just, but you, Belinda, show up every time. You make time to be here to learn something that you didn't know. And then you take it back in the group and you actually say to people, how come none of you watch this? You should get on and watch it. And you're making everyone better for that reason. Because remember what we always teach. It takes one crazy person to start a movement, but the movement is actually started by the first follower, right? Mm-hmm. So without the first follower, you cannot go anywhere. And, Karim Bokta and Holly Patton were pretty much two of my first followers. And, watching them thrive in their businesses now is amazing. And now when you have new people.
To tell you this, actually, I spoke to Karim this morning and he just told me that he's had his best month in business ever.
Yeah,
so
that's sensational.
I look forward to breaking that down a little bit further, but yes, it's amazing for those. And Man on the Mound is what you're referring to there. So if you haven't seen it, it is the best video you can watch. The best 3 or 4 minute video that you can see. But Kristian Livolsi, let's put a wrap on this hot seat episode. It's been wonderful to break down this episode of time, your insights and your passion that you brought to this episode. It's been so much fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, I've got to hit the outro button, don't I? All right. Until next time, live with purpose, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on the hot seat. We hope today's session gave you valuable insights to drive your business forward.
Remember, every challenge is an opportunity for growth.
Every question brings us closer to the answers that can transform our businesses. Stay connected with us, follow our journey, share your thoughts, and be a part of our community.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss future episodes. Together, let's elevate your business to new heights.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the hot seat.